Today from the Global Lane, al-Baghdadi is alive. The Islamic State survives. We have a heart-wrenching story from the mother of a 21-year-old who joined the jihad. Winning the hearts and minds of the electorate. Should felons be allowed to vote? From prison. Elizabeth Warren proposes free college tuition. Just how much will it cost you? And in San Francisco, finding a mural of the father of our country offensive. Bye-bye, George. And it's all right here, right now, from the Global Lane. A new image of the elusive leader of the Islamic State, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, has surfaced. It's actually an image capture from a video, the first of them seen in nearly 5 years. It's not known when the video was taken. Of course, thousands of lives were lost, others devastated, homes and cities were destroyed, all because al-Baghdadi and his band of Islamic terrorists waged jihad on Iraq and Syria. Well, our next guest lost her own son after he joined the ISIS jihad. Christiane Boudreau is a Canadian who says her son Damien was killed in battle. Ms. Boudreau heads up the Mothers for Life network. So, Christiane, tell us how your son Damien came to join ISIS at the age of 21.
It was a long process for him. So the grooming began early onset. And by the time 2012 rolled around, he changed significantly, packed up, said he was going to study Arabic in Egypt, and left in November of 2012. It wasn't until January 2013 that I learned he'd in fact traveled over to Turkey and been in a training camp where he crossed the border into Syria just after Christmas.
What were the signs? Were there any signs at all? I mean, did he join Islam, become a Muslim?
He did. He converted to Islam at the age of 17 after a suicide attempt. He decided that he couldn't come to church with me anymore. He didn't believe in the Bible. There were too many contradictions. So he was looking for his own life meaning at that time. And to him, that's what resonated with him. And that's what he felt comfortable where the belief system was. And I supported him completely. He was positive. Everything in his life was changing for the better. He had really great friends. But then he moved to a different part of the city, disconnected with the friends that he'd originally had, and had been introduced to different people. I really didn't think he was actually going to leave until he called me from the plane that morning.
How did you learn that he was actually a part of ISIS and the jihad?
Well, originally he'd been with Jabhat al-Nusra, and with all the infighting, he changed over to ISIS in the summer of 2013. I found out he'd traveled with a terrorist organization when our security intelligence service showed up on my doorstep and started asking a lot of questions. And I said, well, he was in Egypt. And that's when they corrected me, saying they've been watching him for almost 2 years and the individuals he'd been involved with. And that's how I'd learned that. I was completely shocked and didn't understand the whole movement, didn't understand anything about violent extremism whatsoever, and started researching. And that's how I found out which groups he'd been with.
How was he killed? How did you learn about it?
Unfortunately, I received a phone call from a journalist at the beginning of 2014, January 2014, and he was asking me for a recent photograph of Damien, at which time I said best place to find it would be on his Facebook page. And I said, why do you need it? And that's when he stated, oh, there was a Twitter tweet with his eulogy that's been put out there by ISIS and Syrian foreign fighters. And so we just want to see and confirm that it's him.
Well, I can't imagine finding out that way that your son had been killed. And I know it's extremely difficult for any parent to lose their child, but even more so in that way. I can't imagine what you went through. That must have been very difficult days for you.
Still have some of those difficult days. Trust me, it never goes away, especially wondering what those last moments were, not being there as a parent to try to protect them, save them, feeling so helpless for so long. No matter how much I begged him to come home, it was absolutely devastating and nowhere to turn. Who could understand what I was going through without the name calling and all the negative comments, and understanding how much pain our family was in.
And I imagine you probably had a tendency to beat yourself up a little bit, saying, if I'd only done this, how could I have prevented this? Could I have been a better parent? Could I have done this or that? Did you go through that? What did you go through?
I think every parent does. We all question ourselves. It's the first thing that we do is go within ourselves. And the guilt you carry is overwhelming. It was a matter of all the education and the learning that I did to understand the powers of these groups, to understand that, yes, of course, I could have done many things different. We all can about everything in our lives, but we do the best that we can with the tools that we have at that moment. So emotionally now, at times, I still hold that guilt. Logically, I understand the path and how this takes place and the strength of it all.
And I'm sure your faith has helped you through that, has it not? Tell me about that.
It's the only thing I could hang on to. What else do you have? I lost another son in 2001 and almost lost my faith at that time. And in the end, only came through because of it. You try to find something to hang on to. Even though that anger is there, you still need to have that strength to keep pulling you through each day, to wake you up in the morning, to find a new purpose and a new goal in life.
And tell me about your group and how you're helping other moms and dads who may find themselves in a similar situation, radicalization of their children. What are you doing?
What we're doing now is we've been reaching out since 2015, February of 2015, reaching out to anybody through media, family members. It can be sisters, brothers, sometimes it's aunts and uncles, moms and dads. And we're putting ourselves out there to support them. We have a peer support group with other parents, and then they've started their offshoot organizations in their communities as well to have that physical presence. So what we do is support them emotionally with grief if they've already lost a loved one, help them have a safe place with non-judgment, or if they have fears that somebody they know and love and care about may be toying with some sort of violent extremist ideology.
And I understand you also have a documentary out.
kidsthemovie.com, and we're hoping that's going to be part of a spring off for education. Prevention is the best medicine, much, much easier if you do early onset. And contrary to popular belief, I know a lot of people are very frightened. They don't understand everything. And by talking about it doesn't necessarily put the ideas in their mind. Our kids and youth are much smarter than that. If they're curious, they're going to look for their own information. So by getting this information and education out, so people have an understanding, we're hoping to get to them in an open dialogue, safe place to educate them about the truths of it rather than finding something bad or the wrong people in search of it on the internet.
And of course, that radicalization isn't just about ISIS and Islam. We're seeing right here in the United States a couple of lone wolf incidents, 2 in the last 6 months against synagogues, shooting up innocent worshipers. So Christiane Boudreau from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, thanks so much for sharing your story today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I Wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
A Washington Post ABC News poll finds that newly announced Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has a slim lead over Bernie Sanders. 13% of Democrats say they'd vote for Biden to be their party's nominee. 9% said Sanders. Many of the 20 Democratic presidential candidates are now competing for ideas. Sanders says felons should be allowed to vote, not just after they've done their time, but right from their prison cells. Well, joining us for more on this idea and others being floated by the Democrats is Gary Goldman. He's host of the weekly talk show Business, Politics, and Lifestyles on Boston's WCRN Radio. Gary, we appreciate you joining us. So what's wrong with Bernie's idea? Why shouldn't felons be allowed to vote?
Well, look, I'm a big believer in democracy, and it's my thought, my feeling that once someone commits a crime and they head to prison and they bring out that envelope where they put all their belongings into, as soon as they drop their belongings into that bag, they lose their rights, certain rights. Voting is one of those rights. Now, when they're all done with their term, if they're able to get out of prison and they reach back in to pull their belongings out, then the clock may start up again. But while they are in prison, absolutely no. You know, the people like Bernie never give much thought to the victim. I mean, the victim, look at the bombing this week, the shooting this weekend out in San Diego. Under Bernie's thought process, he'd give the shooter the right to vote, but the victim is passed on. She doesn't have a chance in the world. So, it's typical Bernie Sanders, typical, a lot of the Democratic policy that they're not giving thought into this process.
The big push is on. I think it's Kamala Harris who has said non-citizens should also be allowed to vote. What about that one?
Yeah, I mean, look, that was going to be the next criteria they were going to look at because, again, it's another voting pool for them. And I think until they are stopped and there's a big push against this whole type of thought process, they're going to continue to throw everything at us to try and get additional voters for their party. That's what this amounts to. I think a lot of the American people are tired. Even some of my very good friends on the left are getting tired with this nonsense and rhetoric, and it has to stop somewhere.
Well, I know in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and I used to live in Maryland years ago, there they allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. So why not federal ones? Why not let anyone vote?
I think that's the process. They start on the local level and they try to bring it up to the state level and then eventually to the federal elections, president, senator, Congress. But that's the whole mentality. Look, we have a very interesting situation going on in Massachusetts here, where we just had a judge who stopped a trial. You may have heard about this, who let an illegal immigrant out the back door in order to get him away from the ICE agents that were there to had a detainer on him. She is now facing a federal indictment. I think whether it's the federal government or the state government starts putting pressure on communities and making them follow the laws that are in place, this type of behavior is going to continue. But I think people are getting a little tired of it, even here in liberal Massachusetts.
Even in Massachusetts. Well, Nancy Pelosi also floated the idea, Gary, about 16-year-olds being allowed to vote. What do you think of that? Should we lower the voting age?
Absolutely not. 16-year-olds have a difficult enough time driving an automobile, never mind putting them behind a voting booth. I think there are ways away from voting. Their intellect is just in the beginning stages. And here's the other thing. Maybe they ought to teach them some civics in some of these schools before they allow them to go to the voting polls, because they've taken a lot of American history and what the vote really means and what it's all about away from students in schools.
Gary, why this effort by Democrats to expand voting rolls? Why now?
I think when you look at what the President Trump has done with Hispanics, blacks, job creation, I think the Democrats are concerned where some of these votes are going to go. The Democrats are doing their best to belittle what the president has done. But, actions speak louder than words. When people are able to get jobs and meaningful jobs, they're concerned. They're concerned that a certain element of the population is now going to vote for President Trump to keep him in office, to continue the expansion and role of jobs, especially of blacks. And I think that's concerning them.
And, Gary, we can't let you go without talking about good old Uncle Joe, Senator Biden. Do you think he has a real shot at getting the Democratic Party nomination for president, or will more women who felt uncomfortable about some of his actions surface?
I think I personally don't believe Joe Biden will be the nominee. I think there is a lot of yet to come out with women. He changes his stories, and I think what is to come on a lot of the what President Trump hopefully wants to go after with the Mueller report and what involvement what he likes to call the Obama administration's unblemished record. I think we may find that there is something may have gone on there at some level. They claim they don't want an old white guy running for president. They may have him in Bernie Sanders, but I don't think Joe Biden's the guy that's going to be there.
Well, it should be very interesting because Biden was a part of the administration, was he not, when all this Russia investigation was going on or starting? So it should be an interesting campaign season, Gary, leading up to the first primary. I guess now just 9 months away. Gary Goldman, thank you for your insights today.
My pleasure.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man coming.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit cbn.com. The I wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
Now that Joe Biden has jumped into the Democratic presidential sweepstakes, will he embrace the policies of other candidates and push for free college tuition for students? Elizabeth Warren is proposing a $640 billion debt relief package that would also eliminate college tuition for all 2- and 4-year public colleges. Can the country afford it? Well, here to set us straight is Dr. Michael Busler. He's a public policy analyst and professor of finance at New Jersey's Stockton University. Dr. Busler, it's good to have you on with us again. So first, tell us, what is Warren proposing? It sounds good because everybody likes free stuff, don't we?
Yeah, actually, I think it's a terrible idea. First off, she's grossly underestimated the cost. There's about $1.5 trillion in student debt. She wants to eliminate about 95% of it. So it's probably going to cost about 1.2 trillion and not 640 billion. That's the first bad part. The second bad part is how are you going to pay for it? There's an annual cost of probably another 125 billion per year. Since we have a large budget deficit, that's going to have to be paid for. She proposes to pay for that by putting on a 2% wealth tax. And she says she's only going to tax the very wealthy. Well, the problem is there's not that many of them, number one. And number two, by raising taxes on the wealthy, you will destroy capital formation. The wealthy pay their taxes, spend what they'll spend on their lifestyles, and then they have a large amount left over to save and invest. And that becomes capital going into the economy. Today, we have a capital-intensive economy, which means we need capital for the economy to grow.
Dr. Busler, then, can we do anything to help college students reduce the cost of education? Because it seems that many are opting for trade schools now rather than 4 years, 5, 6 years in university.
Absolutely. College tuition has gone up astronomically in the last 30 years. The colleges know that when they raise tuition, the students aren't really going to complain about that. They're just going to say, I have to get a little more financial aid. And they end up graduating on average today with about $30,000 worth of debt, which is a bad thing. However, having debt is only a problem. Elizabeth Warren says it's crushing debt. Well, I don't think it's crushing. $30,000, they give you 10 years to pay it back. The monthly payment amounts to about what a car loan would be. So that's certainly not crushing debt. But the real solution is exactly what President Trump is doing. A debt is only a problem if you don't have sufficient income. College students today are complaining the debt is heavy because the economy has been stagnant really for the last decade or so. What happens is they take a job for which they really didn't need the college degree. They become what we call underemployed and end up making lower income. Well, a high debt with low income is a problem. However, what's happening now, and it's been happening in the last 6, 8, 10 months, almost a year now, is the growth in the economy has created more opportunity.
It's not just college tuition, though. We have entitlement programs that may soon go bankrupt. I'm thinking Social Security, Medicare. Tell us about that.
The system works as long as there are 5, 6, 7 people working for every one collecting. Well, the problem is with baby boomers aging and with millennials having fewer children, the number of people in the workforce paying has gone way down, and now there's only 2 or 3 people working for each person collecting. Making matters worse is a good thing in that people are living a lot longer, and I say that's a good thing. However, if you retire at 66 or 67 and you live to be 95 or 100, which I hope everybody does, but the problem is you can't expect the government to pay for Social Security and Medicare for those 30-some years after retirement. When Social Security was set up in the mid-1930s, people retired at 65. The life expectancy was 67, so you only collected for a couple of years. We simply are not going to have enough funds to be able to pay all the Social Security and all the Medicare that will be required. So we're going to have to come up with a solution for that before it does go completely bankrupt. Since there are no fair solutions, I think the next best thing to do is to look for the solution that is the least unfair. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to have to significantly raise the retirement age at least to 70 or 72, and maybe even a little bit higher as the population lives longer. That's really the only way to save some of these systems, as unpopular as that's going to be.
Okay,
Yes,
Dr. Michael Busler, economics analyst, professor of finance at Stockton University. We thank you for setting it straight.
Thank you.
As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time.
Will you join us?
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
You may be allowed to wear a T-shirt advocating LGBTQ rights at San Francisco's George Washington High School, but a mural of George Washington? Some school officials say it's got to go. The mural is called The Life of George Washington. It's from 1936 and depicts the father of our country pointing at some colonists as they step over the body of a Native American. Another fresco shows enslaved Africans. School supervisor Matt Haney says the murals aren't conducive to a supportive school environment. He says students shouldn't have to look up and see depictions of their ancestors either being killed or enslaved. True, some people may be offended by that, but I think most students probably walk right by it. They don't pay much attention to the mural. One man leading the fight to keep the mural says it's important to confront history, not erase history. And I agree. How can we learn from the past if we don't teach our children about our successes and failures, the good and the ugly? Now that's positive, not negative. Today it's historic art that some may find offensive, but what's next? Removing George Washington's name from the high school? Should Washington's achievements be ignored because he owned slaves, killed Frenchmen and Native Americans in the French-Indian War, and the British during the War of Independence? Oh no, the father of our country was a murderer. Yes, millennials, if he had not fought and killed others, you'd still be drinking tea and eating crumpets and paying excessive taxes without having a say in it. Like Nazi book burnings and Iran's Ayatollahs supplanting Persian history with Islam, where does it all end, America? If your spouse offends you, you get a quickie divorce. It seems like we're now in a society where people think they have the right not to be offended. You know what I call that? Groupthink. Let's all think alike. Then there will be no problems in our society, right? Wrong. Our diversity of opinions and learning from our mistakes make us strong. So San Francisco School Board, be true educators. Don't erase American history because parts of it are imperfect. Well, that's it from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.